Kia ora koutou. Ko rangituma te maunga, ko rua mahanga te awa. Ko ngati parau ngā tahu toku iwi no Wairarapa ahau, ko Talitha toku ingoa. Hello everyone, my name is Talitha and I'm from the Wairarapa region. I associate to the mountain Rangitumo and the river the Rua Mahanga, which is a river in my local area. My name is Talitha, if you didn't get that already. I wanted to come in and do a video today on the concept or the idea of white supremacy and cultural appropriation. I'm being quite vulnerable today, and I appreciate that what I share today might not resonate with everybody. All I ask is that you listen and that you come into this video with an open heart. And I also want to preface this video by saying if anyone is not able to share their views and their ideas in a critical or a neutral manner in the comment section of this video, then you can move on. I'm not here to create sides or divides with what I share today. So firstly, I want to acknowledge my ancestors on my mother's side, my grandmother, my grandfather and their parents, the indigenous people of this land. They are the Māori people, and that was the language that I just opened this video with. So I acknowledge my Māori lineage, and I acknowledge where my ancestors come from. I acknowledge my father's side. My father is Australian and he has European blood, and so naturally within me I also have European blood. I have Irish, Scottish and probably no doubt English and many other ancestors and connections globally, right? So I acknowledge my ancestors on his side as well. I'd like to acknowledge the people that walk on this earth, the indigenous people of this planet, and basically all of us here. We all bleed the same blood and we all inhabit this world, this globe. So I acknowledge you all out there. I recognise that there have been injustice in our globe and a lot of oppression for minority groups, and I acknowledge this and I acknowledge you. I recently have experienced something that is not so familiar to me, and that's what I wanted to jump in and share my feelings and thoughts on the matter in this video. I actually did a video prior to this and it was 30 minutes long, so I thought I'd cut it down. So I'll be very mindful of the timing here as I speak with you in this manner. Recently I was accused of white supremacy. I was accused of being a culture vulture. I was asked or challenged, why is a white person doing dreadlocks? And yeah, just basically a bit of backstory. I put a Facebook post out there into the world and I targeted a global audience, and I got the repercussions that I just shared with you. I may or may not decide to drop them in this video. I took screenshots, but I've since deleted the post, not to silence these people, but to take a step back and gain perspective on the situation. A lot of learnings come out of those posts, so that is something that I am grateful for, and so hence why I'm here to have a discussion about these accusations. Firstly, I want to say that the people of this country, the indigenous people, a part of my culture, were and still are have been oppressed and oppressed people. The actions of colonization and the actions of basically, you know, like explorers coming from overseas and coming into our country, they have created a long-standing effect. And to this day, the Māori people are still challenging and holding people to account for the actions that were made many, many years ago. And for me, something that is really important is to recognise is that recently being challenged as white supremacy, I want to acknowledge that Sure, my skin is white. My blood is not solely of white origin. I am a person of Indigenous culture, and admittingly, I don't know that culture really well. I don't know it really deeply, and here's part of the reason why. When my mother was born and grew up, it was not okay to be a Māori person. It was not okay to speak the Māori language, and same with my grandmother. So they were strapped at school and they were oppressed and basically weren't allowed to be their own person. And as a result, these actions happen all over the world, yeah? And unfortunately, as a result, living in a Pākehā or a white or a European world here in New Zealand, their culture became diminished. And fortunately, we have a lot of people that have held true to that culture and have taken on lineage and have pursued keeping the culture alive here in New Zealand. Unfortunately for me, I did not grow up in a Māori culture. I grew up in a Pākehā world, and there's no excuses or blame here. It's just the nature of the business, right? So I didn't really connect really deeply to my roots, and it's something that I really am looking forward to investigating and exploring and inquiring about. I want to acknowledge my really average attempt on my mihi, introducing myself in this video, and I want to talk a little bit about that and cultural appropriation in a moment in relation to that. But firstly, I want to say that I understand that there is a lot of hurt and a lot of blame and a lot of anger and a lot of angst with the past actions of people predominantly of white skin to Indigenous cultures and people of minority groups. I want to acknowledge that I recognise this because it's happening here in New Zealand, and it has happened in the past year, and it's continuing to happen, and it's continuing to happen around the world. So I acknowledge all of these things. Thank you for bearing with me. Firstly, I want to dive into this idea of white supremacy and this accusation put towards me. Let's have a look at the definition of white supremacy for a moment. I've got it in front of me. White supremacy, or the white supremacist, is the racist belief that white people are superior to people of other races, and therefore should be dominant over them. So first and foremost, I don't believe and I don't hold true that definition of myself as a person. I don't rock up and show up in the world with the intention to dominate or to own or to be of that nature over any other person, regardless of their race. So to be accused blatantly of that, for me, felt like a very unjust accusation. Boo-hoo, right? But I just wanted to share that actually, when I show up in the world, I don't show up from a place of that nature. And just because I have white skin does not make me a white supremacist. What I feel like these people have brought light to is the idea of being white skin. We have certain privileges. I feel like that's probably where they were coming from, and I want to recognize that that's maybe, like an element of their pain and their angst about that. But I do not support white supremacy. Let's make that really clear. And just because my skin is white does not make me automatically that type of person. Let's look at cultural appropriation, the definition of this, right? So here, and it's just one definition, there are many, but this is one that I've just brought up. Cultural appropriation is the unacknowledged or the inappropriate adoption of customs, practices, ideas of one people of society by members of another, typically the more dominant people of society. So I recognize again that because I'm white-skinned, that someone from the outside might accuse me of this action because of that very fact. And I want to acknowledge this idea of inappropriate adoption of the customs, practices and ideas. So like I was saying before, I come from a Māori culture, and if we look at cultural appropriation with some of the beliefs and some of the practices that the Māori people embrace and live by, we can look and we can see that throughout the world there could be many cases of cultural appropriation of our culture. From catwalks and artists representing the tāmoko or the tattoo on the face on the catwalk. That could be associated with cultural appropriation. I've seen Japanese women, for example, actually have groups of them practicing the haka, and typically a haka is a war dance, and it's there to intimidate the opponent, right? And it's typically conducted by men. So the idea that Japanese women are standing up and performing these haka is really interesting, and can be thought to be cultural appropriation as well. They're taking the context of this behavior, or this practice, or this sacred, let's make that really clear, this sacred practice, and turning it into something else. So yes, that could be classified as cultural appropriation by this definition. Now, I could stand there and I could judge these people, and I could create more blame, more angst, more anger about these actions, and that's a personal choice. And I believe that the people that have shared with me have taken that role, and just basically project hate and anger, and not wanting to come into having a conversation with a person about why they're doing what they're doing, whether or not they understand the nature of what they're doing, who has taught them to do what they do, all of those concepts. So I can go in with this blame and this angst attitude and create more of that within this world, or I could take a step back and go, okay, I feel triggered by this, question why that is happening, and then approach it from a different way. You know, when we take ownership and personal sovereignty over our feelings and our attitudes and our perspectives and our view of the world, and we can look at it and go, this is how I feel, and I acknowledge that this is a really shitty feeling or a contracted feeling, or I feel angst here, but then approaching it from a different perspective so it doesn't create more of that, that's personal sovereignty, and that's where we can meet in the middle to move forward. So if someone states to me that I'm culturally appropriating and that I'm white supremacy, then I want to make a statement there and say, have you taken a moment to understand where I'm coming from, to be open to having a conversation, or are you going to sit there and just judge, belittle, bully, shame, create angst, which is essentially what people who oppress other people want to cultivate within the people that they're oppressing. So I want to put that out there, that idea, okay? So I would like to think that when I come into situations like this, I want to be open to understanding where that other person's coming from. And if these Japanese women don't know what they're doing, then this is an opportunity for someone to step up and say, hey, let's educate you a little bit on this. That's where we can work more as a collective rather than creating divides, which essentially is what people in this internet world typically want to do when they share blatant accusations like I have been accused of. Not that, you know, it bothers me that much, but I wanted to make a point of that. There's also another point that I want to bring up around this whole concept of cultural appropriation. So at the start of this video, I introduced myself and I used a form of doing so called a mihi. Now, it's a part of the Te Reo Māori language, and I could be culturally appropriating my own culture in relation to this definition of inappropriately taking on board a custom of a different culture. So someone out there of Māori descent who really knows the Māori culture could come forward and say to me, hey, your mihi was inappropriate, it was not appropriate from the context of this video, it was unfinished or not a whole mihi. There could be all sorts of elements of what I have chosen to embody or bring forward in this video. These could be classified as cultural appropriation. So in theory, according to this, one could take the context of I'm culturally appropriating my own culture. At which point do we stop? At which point do we say, hey, you've done this action, you've done this behavior, here's some things that you can learn from it, because the way in which you've done it and the way in which you're embodying it or embracing it isn't quite in alignment with the culture. I don't choose to own dreadlock culture. I don't come from a place of ownership there. I come from a place of being of service to other people. If someone's got dreadlocks and they want their hair maintained in the way that I maintain them, then I'm going to be of service to these people to help them. I don't own this, and this whole idea of ownership over something is really interesting to me. The Māori people and I shouldn't generalize, but a part of the Māori culture is that, for example, we don't own the land, we don't own the ocean, we don't own the rivers. We are caretakers of these elements. We are caretakers of the land. We are caretakers of the rivers, and because they provide to us, they're a part of our system. They're a part of our dependence, right? And we don't own it. We are caretakers. We look after it. And when we come from that place of this looking after and this creating of an embodiment of care, we can move forward in a more, cooperative manner. And I feel like that's something that's really important to acknowledge, especially in today's day and age, and especially in this world. So, am I culturally appropriating dreadlocks? That's the real question here. I thought it's probably a good idea to go and reinforce what I already know around the dreadlock culture here in New Zealand, but also globally, and have a look at, like the aspects of the dreadlock culture. So firstly, I'm from New Zealand. So in New Zealand, typically, I don't want to speak on behalf of all dreadlock wearers in New Zealand, but as a culture, Aussies and Kiwis typically shorten our words. We abbreviate things. So dreadlocks become dreads or locks. Now I understand in the States, or people of African American descent might not actually think that what I wear are locks. They are dreads or dreadlocks. I appreciate that, and that comes with some history, right? So firstly, I want to say here in New Zealand and Australia, in general, we typically shorten words. So you'll see in some of my online content that I'll use the word locks. Clearly my brand is Life Force Locks, or brand name is that. So that's part of the rationale why I have chosen those particular terms, and I understand that might not sit well with the entire planet. Okay, and I'm sorry if you feel that way. I apologize if that offends you. It's now your responsibility to look out for and take care of the feelings that brings up within you. The nature of dreadlocks is such a broad and varied history, right? You can see throughout the literature that many cultures have adopted dreadlocks throughout the history of time. Even the Māori people, before they had access to hair care and maintenance, they wore the hair in certain ways, and the nature of the beast, if you don't have a way to maintain the hair can lock up. It can create dreads. So from the Celts to the Greek to the Egyptians to Indian to African American people to people of the Caribbean, we have a huge and vast collective culture as to what dreadlocks mean to each of us. And I want to acknowledge that can create some animosity, I guess, as to who's right and wrong. And I want to just say there are no right and wrongs. We all have our truths, and that's really important. I want to also acknowledge that people wear dreadlocks for different reasons. We all know this. There's a spiritual connection that, like having unkept hair may bring us closer to spirituality or an entity or a god. There are the I guess perspectives of wearing locks to rebel against a society or to make a statement about how one was treated. There are reasons to wear locks because it's a practical thing. There are also reasons to wear locks or dreadlocks because they want to embrace a certain look, and that might not sit well with people. I understand that. We're all a diverse people. We all have our different reasons as to why we want to embody and embrace something, and until we understand that everyone's truth is truth, and we can take ownership of our personal sovereignty and stop pointing blame and angst towards each other, we won't move forward as a people. So the reason why I choose to wear dreadlocks, and I have in the past as well, and the reason why I chose today not to straighten my hair, as you will see in many other photos of myself on the online world, is because this is what my hair is like in its natural state. So the first thing that I want to say is the reason why I choose to wear dreadlocks is out of practicality. My hair is naturally curly and afro, it's fritzy, it is dry, and wearing dreadlocks has been the easiest way for me to keep and maintain my hair. The second reason why is that it makes me feel like I'm coming back into who I am as a person, like I'm really showing up and owning who I am as a person. When I got my dreadlocks this time round, I really felt like, yes, this is me, this is who I am. Not that our hair defines us, but you know, it just makes me feel like I can embrace who I am. And the third reason why is because, like I said, it makes me feel good. So for people to stand out there in the online world and point blame and accusations blindly to me is very interesting. Without even getting to know who I am or understanding where I come from and the rationale why I choose to wear dreadlocks. It's not from a spiritual perspective. It is not from a place of vanity. It is simply because it's practical and it makes me feel better connected to who I am. So I guess in some ways that is a spiritual thing, but also it makes me feel good. Now, I understand that the methods that I use can also be offensive to other people. Dreadlocks should be unkept. Dreadlocks shouldn't have to be forced or made. They need to naturally occur. All of these theories are very valid, but that doesn't mean to say that that's the only way and the truth about how people can wear their hair. I want to also say that I've had dreadlocks 2 other times, and I have done the freeform, and it was really, really hard for me to keep my hair, and it was important for me to have tidy hair because of the role and the job that I was in. And I've also used chemical, and that was just an epic nightmare. And I've also used the back comb and using actual products, and that wasn't so great for me either. This time round, I simply use a crochet hook, and yes, I created dreadlocks mostly instantly. That's the way that I operate, and I be of service to other people in this world is to use that method as well. And I understand that it's not for everybody. It is for me though, and that is how I choose to operate. So, practicality makes me feel good, makes me feel like I'm coming into my own and embodying who I am as a person. If you want to judge me for that, fine. But I'm not here to take blatant criticism, blatant accusations, and people not getting to know me. I will not tolerate that. And if you're one of those people and you want to drop your comments down below and start accusing people and pointing blame and creating angst, then you can move on. Because that energy and that way of approaching the world and being as a person is not something that I want to invite into my space, online or in my personal life. And I believe that those people that resonate with me and want to operate from a place of compassion, from heart-led and from understanding will be in my tribe, will follow me, and will continue to uphold the space here. So I want to make that really clear. Anyway, like I said, I want to keep this video really short. Those are my thoughts, those are my perspective on white supremacy, cultural appropriation. I just really encourage you to move forward in a way that is of understanding with each other. That's how we're going to make massive change in this world, especially at this time in this climate where everyone is wanting to create divide, blame, etc. If we want to have a really healthy space to live in our own bubbles, in our own communities, in our nations, we have to find a way to create an understanding with each other in order to move forward. Hate, blame, angst, divide has created all of the massive unrest within this world. And if we want to move forward, we need to move forward together. I want to leave you with a Māori proverb, and it's one that I've always resonated with. Waiho I te toipoto, kao I te toiroa. Means let us keep closer together, not wide apart. Waiho I te toipoto, kao I te toiroa. Let us keep closer together, not wide apart. Thank you for joining me in this video. Thank you for seeing this out. Ka kite.